Welcome everyone to this webinar, Communicate with a Splash. I am Colia Braun-Greiner. I'm the religious educator with Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Anna Awimbo, who's the Director of Leadership Development. And she'll share a little bit about how this webinar fits with our Faithful Green Leaders training.
Yeah, thanks, Colia. So welcome everyone again to this Learning Lab, which as you might already know, serves as a supplement to our Faithful Green Leaders training. If you've been to our website lately, you've probably noticed that we've already scheduled the next series of trainings for 2021. So I encourage you, if you haven't yet attended any of those core trainings, take a look and see if one of the dates works for you. We'll have one in February, June, and October of next year. And I'll go ahead and put the link of the first February training in the chat. So let's jump into the session. Back to you, Colia.
Great. Thank you, Anna. I'm going to begin with a very brief prayer. And this is actually a prayer chant. And as we're facing a lot of challenges these days with COVID, the breath of God, the breath within us is really essential for both our physical and our spiritual lives. So I'm going to sing this chant. Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill us with life anew, that we may love what thou dost love and do what thou wouldst do. May it be so. Amen. May we all go forth and do as God would call us to do in this work. Well, it's a delight for me to be introducing our first presenter at this webinar is Jean McCann, who is on IPC's board, and she also is the principal for McCann Communications. So please take it away, Jean.
Thank you so much, Colia. Let me just get my screen up here. How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm fine.
Good. And thank you so much, Colia and Anna. As Colia mentioned, I'm the incoming chair of the board of IPC, which I'm very excited about. I've been on the board for about 3 years. I was chair of the Green Team at St. Columba's Episcopal Church in DC for a couple of years. I moved to Baltimore about 1.5 years ago, and I was hunting for a new church when COVID hit. So I'm currently still searching. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about messaging, and you're probably familiar with many of the rules of good communications. So it may seem like I'm belaboring the obvious at some points, but I think it might be a good refresher for all of us, especially in these unusual times that we are living in. And I also realize we have somewhat of a diverse audience tonight, so there's likely a wide range of experience, talent, and different kinds of communications that you're all called to prepare and to share. And so obviously the different kind of messaging you need when you're inviting people to an event versus trying to pass a bill or get people to sign a petition is very different, but there's some obviously things in common. So hopefully you'll find something here that suits you. So all communications basically comes down to this: who do you want to do what? Who are you asking? What do you want them to do? You might be trying to persuade somebody, and usually most communications is about some kind of persuasion. You might be trying to persuade them to read something, to sign something, to show up somewhere, to know something, to share something, to give money. Ultimately, you're trying to change minds, behaviors, attitudes, hearts. And you can probably think of more actions. This guy is an expert at getting people to do what he wants them to do. Not everything needs to be a hard sell, of course. And sometimes a soft sell is much better. So I'm going to give you the secret of all good communications tonight. And it's about the 4 C's of effective communications. Every time you need to write something or communicate something, just ask yourself if it meets the 4C test. The first one is it clear? And that just seems like such a simple, obvious test, but I can't tell you the number of events, especially that I see on Facebook. They're inviting me to do something, but I don't have a time, I don't have a date, I don't know where it's going to take place. So that's just so basic, but a lot of people just skip it because we just get it. We know so much about what we're asking, we forget other people don't. Another part of being clear is avoiding jargon. When I was at St. Columba's, I kept hearing the word SCAP, 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 SCAP. And I didn't know what the heck that was. For years, I didn't. I was there for 15 years. I never knew what it was. And I guess I was too lazy to ask somebody. But it stood for, I believe, and Anna, who is a former member, correct me if I'm wrong, St. Columba's Appalachian Project, I believe. But it took me forever. And I was in the community. And I still see them using that a lot on Facebook in open groups. So avoid jargon. The second point is be concise. You know, these days, people don't read. It's just a fact. They don't like to read. They want short bullet points. That's why visuals are so very important these days. But luckily, I was trained as a journalist. So when print was at a price, you had to always write tight and short. And so I'm always looking to get rid of little words here and there. And that comes in handy when I'm communicating, especially in social media these days, where you have, you know, word limits. But, you know, little words can make a difference. Like instead of saying the congregations of Baltimore, get rid of the of, say Baltimore congregations, things like that. Also, avoid using the 50-cent word when you can use the 5-cent word. You know, two of my little bugaboos are people who purchase something instead of buy it, or people who often offer beverages instead of drinks. Now, I know we could spend a whole evening on the things that make us crazy, but just try to be simple, clear, and concise. You also want to be compelling. You're trying to persuade me to do something, so you have to make me believe in whatever it is. One of the best ways of persuading people is by sharing a personal story. You know, that can just be very compelling, and people love hearing stories. And I think someone mentioned storytelling. Maybe we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Even if you just want me, if you want me to read something, no, you don't need to tell me your whole story, but you do need to convince me of why I need to spend my precious time reading something. And the last C is credible. Is it credible? And again, especially in these days when we are just swimming in a sea of disinformation, one of the most important things you can do is be accurate. You know, check, double check, triple check your communications, and make sure that it's accurate before you share. One of the things I've fallen for many, many times is sharing an article only to have someone say, hey, that's from 2012, you know, because I didn't check it. And so don't fall for that. In journalism school, one of the first things you learn is how to write a news story. And that's what they used to teach us anyway, is making sure you put the 5 W's and an H in a lead. And those are who, what, where, why, when, and how. So along with the 4 C's, make sure you've covered all of these in your communications, even if it's just an invitation to something, you know, again, maybe especially if it's an invitation. Also, if you're writing a press release, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you want to write it as though it's a news story, because especially a lot of local newspapers or local bloggers, they will often just take your press release and just print it verbatim. So they're more likely to do that if it's already written as a story. So the title of this slide, Begin with the End in Mind, is actually from a 1990s self-help book. Some of you might remember The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of the 7 habits is, you know, working backwards from whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So here are some of the other questions you should consider as you're crafting your messages. In communications, we always talk about internal communications versus external, like internal to our community, our neighborhood, closed group, versus talking, you know, in any sort of public forum. But don't assume the person reading knows you or knows your organization, even internally, as my little St. Columba's experience shows, unless you're posting on a closed network. And even then, you know, don't assume. Think about the issue and what it is you're trying to convey. A big topic is your audience, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, a little bit more. But it's important trying to understand the kind of people you're trying to reach. Why do you care? What is your passion? Bring your passion to your communications. It's important to you, but what's going to make it important to me? You know, maybe sharing that passion with me. Can you make me care as much as you care? And then just get real clear again about what you want your audience to know or to do. And I wanted to pull out the why a little bit, because I think as people of faith, it can be very powerful to include our faith in our messaging in a very respectful way. And I know that Green Leaders Training really goes into this, you know, trying to help us craft our faith stories. But as Collier always likes to say, we're not just the Sierra Club with prayer. So the thing that differentiates us from all those other sort of do-gooder organizations and all those other green organizations is our faith. So don't be shy about sharing your faith as you're comfortable. And, you know, you're trying to reach people who are going to resonate with that message. So I think that's pretty important to do. Let's talk about audience a little bit. You probably have a good idea of who you're trying to reach with any particular communications and where they're likely to be found. But I often work with clients who I ask, you know, the first question I always ask is, well, who are you trying to reach? And too many of them say, oh, the general public, everyone, we're trying to reach everyone. And that's not a great answer. Because you're really not trying to reach everyone. Usually it's some subset of everyone. Maybe it's your congregational members. Maybe it's your local community. Maybe it's congregational officials or elected officials, but really try to hone in on who it is. And then from there, you can figure out where are they likely to hang out and how are they likely to consume information. And I've just put up a bunch of various medium that you might not necessarily consider, but I don't want you to forget about. Things like posters in storefront windows, for instance. If you're trying to publicize a movie night or something that's to the public, or, you know, ads in different publications. I live in Federal Hill in Baltimore, and we have a very vibrant neighborhood association that had a wonderful print newsletter that was hand delivered to every household in the neighborhood right up until March when COVID hit. And so that went by the wayside. And so we're struggling now with how to restart it. And we've had all these conversations. And some people are like, I never want to get another piece of paper. I only just put it in the Facebook group. That's enough. Well, no, of course it's not. Not everybody's in that group. Some people are like, well, why do we need it at all? We have a local blog, southbmore.com.
Meeting tonight for our church with other people in the Chesapeake. So I've got to watch it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyway, you know, some people are arguing we don't need it all, but the point is, these days the whole nation isn't tuning in as in the 1960s to the 3 news channels. You know, we all have our preferences. Some people hate Facebook. Some people, that's all they use. Some people only use email. So just think about trying to reach people through as many venues as possible. And don't overlook those neighborhood associations, community listservs, Facebook groups, Nextdoor, which is big in some neighborhoods, and those local blogs. And then, you know, I know this, I don't even need to say this out loud, but I'm saying it anyway. Don't assume your audience looks like you. You know, you want to be a welcoming community. And because visuals are so important these days, you want to display, you know, the diversity of people in your communications, on your website, in your print communications. So people like to see people that look like them. So just don't forget about that. And then don't assume your audience talks like you either. You know, if you're coming from a Christian perspective, just be aware of that. And that's, of course, absolutely fine if you're using words common to that perspective, if you're talking to a very closed group. But try to use inclusive language when you can, because we want to make people feel welcome. So I'm going to share one of my favorite communication tools. I'm almost at the end, don't worry. This is called a message box, and it's really helpful when you're trying to craft messaging for some sort of a campaign. And I use the word campaign loosely. Like, a campaign can be getting a bunch of people to your movie night, perhaps, or getting turnout somewhere. But sometimes you'll see this with different labels. This one has problem, solution, action, vision. Sometimes you'll see it will say problem. It will say, so what? You know, what's your so what? What's the benefits? It's a way to think through the mountain of information that you hold in your head about whatever it is you're trying to communicate, and to boil it down to the nuggets, the meat of what people need to know. And it's based on a lot of science around the science of communications. And the goal, and particularly, there's a lot of research on communications, particularly around trying to communicate about climate change. And what we know for sure is that throwing data and science at people does not work to change minds, hearts, or anything. So one thing this is helpful for is, once you know your audience, is to craft these messages in a way that through a lens that's going to reach those people. For instance, I'm working on some public transit messaging right now around climate change and the importance of funding public transit in Maryland. And we have very different messages when we're trying to talk to the business community. We're not talking about greenhouse gas emissions and clean water and pollution. We're talking about getting your employees to work safely, reliably, on time, you know, and that message very much resonates with them, where we'll have a much different message for people who fish or recreational boaters. So this is also very useful when you're talking with journalists, if that ever comes up, because it's a way to come at a problem, no matter, it's not linear. So you don't have to start, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can come at it from any which way. And I've just given you an example on the next page of how we use this when we were trying to pass the Pollinator Protection Act a few years back, and we came up with these different ways to look at what we were trying to ask people to do. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about, you know, what is news? Is it news? I think a lot of congregations often feel like they don't have any news that would be of interest to the public, but that's not necessarily true. I think it's often the opposite. For instance, you know, and in smaller communities, definitely they're looking for news, a lot of these outlets, but also, you know, here we have the Washington Post, who, you know, ran this story when the first church in DC installed solar panels. So they had someone savvy enough to reach out, and they got a story in the Post. But even my little church in Tenley, my not so big church, St. Columba's in Tenley, when we were hosting the Environmental Film Festival in Nation's Capital, we were one venue for that for several years running. And we put out a little release to a lot of different local organizations. And here we have the Tenleytown DC blog that picked it up, and the DuPont Current, which is a free newspaper in DuPont Circle. So you probably have more news than you know. Another final slide is just, you know, so much of communications these days is visual, as we mentioned before. You want to use compelling photos and graphics. You know, everyone's a photographer. Some low-cost resources that I like are, one is Canva, which can help you create very simple graphics that you can share on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They have a million templates. You just need to plug in your own information, your own pictures. Unsplash and Pexels are great resources for free photography. So check those out. But, you know, the media is also, of course, always interested in visuals. So even if you do something as simple like if you're doing a tree planting, for instance, or a cleanup, and you all wear the same colored t-shirt, you know, that can be of interest because now there's a nice visual to go along with it. And we use this this rule when we were working on the Pollinator Protection Act, and this was a very boring, dull hearing in the Maryland State House, and the beekeepers wore their full regalia to this very boring hearing, and an AP photographer picked it up, and you know, it went all over the place. So that's the importance of dressing up for the media. Anyways, that's it, I believe. So I'm happy to take questions after, and also here's my email if anybody wants to get in touch. It's jean.mccann@gmail.com. And I'll stop sharing and hand it back to Kolya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I really appreciate you sharing the wealth of your communications experience with us, and we'll have plenty of time for us to ask Jean questions toward the end. So without any further ado, we'll get back to the slide set here. I want to thank Drew for joining us. He is the Senior Communications Manager with Choose Clean Water Coalition, and he's going to share some other tools with us for communicating with a splash.
All right, next slide. There you go. So real quick, just at the foundation of who I am. I first started my career at the Good Steward campaign, which was a campaign organizing young evangelicals around climate change activism. So you can imagine evangelicals and climate change, at least stereotypically, don't mix well. But there are many evangelicals out there like myself who believe that climate change is a moral crisis and that we need to do something about it. But that's a whole other presentation. But I also have the background with when I was contracting with the EPA, working with their Energy Star Congregations program, working with congregations of all faiths around the country to make their facilities more energy efficient. So faith-based background is kind of where I learned, that's where I started and where my roots were set. So I have a particular affinity for IPC and the great work that you guys do. And after that, I was at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation working on the digital team. A lot of the stuff I'm gonna go over today or this evening really covers stuff I learned during my time at CBF. I was there a little over 5 years. And for a little over a year now, I've been at the Choose Clean Water Coalition, which is more than 250 organizations, nonprofits throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed, stretching up from the headwaters of the bay up in New York, all the way down to the mouth of the bay in Norfolk, Virginia. So that's a little bit about me. So next slide, please.
And IPC is a member.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so a lot of what I'm going to go over, Jean has covered, and that wasn't an oversight. That was intentional because some of these things that we're going to be going over that might be a little bit redundant. We really want to hammer home because they're important, but maybe I can just give it to share that insights from a different perspective. So I also want to mention that each of these slides could be an hour presentation in and of itself. So I really am just skimming the surface, but hope that it can at least get your brain churning and give you an idea of what's to come. Great, next slide, please. All right, so Comms 101. Again, some of this might look familiar, but just want to start off with don't wing it. As a communicator, you know, that's my career. What I know I'm not alone, and Jean can certainly resonate with this, I'm sure, that communications is often an afterthought. That when programs are made, you know, they think about the benefits that program would have, whether it's an event or a campaign, and little thought is brought into how that would actually be accomplished from the communications perspective. You know, asking questions like, will we be able to reach the right people for this? How will we do this? You know, thinking through the communication side of it. So I just want to start there because it really need to consider communications right at the top and integrate those thoughts and considerations from the very beginning. And then as Jean mentioned, knowing your audience is critical, because I couldn't agree more. I've heard so many times, who do you want to reach? Everybody. No, you can't start there, because there's really no way to measure how effective you're being. And one of the things that I love about communications is not only does it help you when you challenge, programmatic folks to not just reach everybody, not only are you helping them think through the communication side of it, but you're also helping, drive the actual program in and of itself by really identifying who we want to reach and, as Jean said, what we want them to do. Couldn't agree more about getting to the point. Attention spans are shorter than they have ever been, and that trend is only going to continue, I fear. So getting to the point right away, it depends on how you're reaching your audience. But like, for an example, one of the rules of email communications is you want to get to the ask, whatever you're asking them to do, within the first 150 words. That's pretty soon if you're looking at just an email. You want to get to what you're actually wanting them to do quickly. Diversify your mediums. Think about this like if you're thinking about investments, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to spread them out. And in deciding which mediums you want to use, you have to go back to that second bullet of knowing your audience. You could think through, if you're trying to reach, young people, for example, to come out to this event, certainly, you should entertain looking at different social media platforms, and I'll dive into that in just a couple minutes. Versus if you're trying to reach, you really have to think through what your audience that you're intending to reach, which mediums would be most successful and effective at reaching them. And lastly, appeals to the heart. Use imagery. That's a crucial part of this. Images, just like the one I included here, can tell a story in and of themselves. Images are remembered much more than words. Have the right messenger. This is something I just want to do a quick show of hands. I learned this at a communications training a little over a year ago, and I just got a kick out of it. What do you think is the most effective messenger that you could have for any particular campaign? And when I say type of person, I'm talking about like occupations. What type of occupations? Either shout it out or drop it in the chat. What do you think would be the most trusted, effective messenger for any given? What's the messenger that you could use?
How about a teacher?
Teachers are up there. It's a good one. Nurses,
A
scientists.
doctor, professor, parent.
Those three are in the top 5. I'll cut to the chase because my favorite one's the least trusted.
Nurses?
Scientists are number 2, if I remember correctly. It's actually farmers. Farmers and ranchers are the number 1 most trusted messenger. And I can give some examples of demonstrating why that's the case, but don't have the time for that. Different presentation. But I do want to dive into who's the least trusted messenger, and don't overthink it. Lawyers, close. Politicians, there you go. Well done. Yeah, politicians are the least trusted messengers. Now, that's not to say that if you have a very respected mayor in your community and you want to invite him or her to your event and, to speak, that you shouldn't do that. Of course, it's the case, but generally speaking, consider who the messenger for your message is. Who are you having say this? And Jean mentioned this also, but tell a story. Capture people with a story, and they'll remember it much more than any scientific fact. All right, next slide, please. I have it up here, so I'll start talking about it, and we'll get it up there. It's a slide about faith-based. So I want to just take a moment thinking through that, faith-based messaging, the core principles of it, you can apply to any audience, but given that if you're talking to an internal audience, you want to speak the language that's familiar to them, that resonates with them. So the first thing is to speak to the why. Why are you doing this? Creation care is something that's, you know, at the heart of what a lot of, I'm guessing a lot of what your work is with green congregations. Speak to the why of why you're doing it. What matters most to this audience? So when I talk with evangelicals about creation care or environmentalism to begin with, what do evangelicals revere more than anything is the Bible. So I just back it up with scripture. So that's just think through, you know, if you're coming from a Catholic background, thinking of, you know, Pope Francis has released some amazing catechisms on environmentalism recently, encyclicals rather.
Excuse me, Drew. Excuse me, Drew. For some,
use their language. Again, that's going back to the Bible example. And then lastly, bring it back to people. A lot of the work, something that I have to run into in talking, you know, considering evangelicals are running more conservative circles, is they feel like it can lend itself to earth worship, and, you know, revering creation more than people. And that's certainly not the case, because really at the heart of what our work is, you know, at least from my perspective, working for clean water, it's about the benefits it has to people. Does, you know, the environment have intrinsic value? I believe that's true. But really you want to talk about how your issues are affecting people, whether it's their pocketbook, whether it's their home values, whether it's whether they're able to enjoy, breathe clean air, public health impacts. The list can go on and on. So just bring it back to how it actually impacts people. Social media. Okay, I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to try to bang these out quickly. Keep it light. Social media is one of those mediums where it's not a formal press release. So it's okay to make jokes, to use emojis, to, you know, keep it informal. Keep it simple, brevity. Just take a moment and think through when you're scrolling through social media. You're not going to read a block of text. You're going to read the quick snippets, the punchy headlines, and that's going to grab your attention. And speaking of grabbing attention, it's all about images. No matter what platform you're using, it's all about images. And a subset of that is eyes. I bet you that the majority of people, when I first pulled up the slides, your eyes were drawn to those osprey eyes staring you down. Studies have proven over and over that when people look at images, they're drawn to the eyes, whether it's people or critters. So use those in your images to get people's attention. Of course, videos are very effective too. And tag others, engage with other organizations, whether it's other congregations or nonprofits or local governments, businesses, what have you. Tag them on whatever platform you're using and build up engagement, build your audience that way. Different types of social platforms. Again, I'll run through these quickly. Facebook has run through some tough times recently, but they're still the king. Ads, I know there's probably tight budgets, and if communications is overlooked to begin with, the idea of getting communications budget might be a tough sell, but $50-100 can go a long way, because you're able to really target with Facebook. You're able to really target who you want to reach geographically, the beliefs. I mean, it's kind of creepy how targeted you can get, to be honest, but it's a really effective tool. And it's a platform where you don't want to be constantly posting. So 2 to 3 posts is typically what's recommended. Twitter is known for being a media and news hub. If you're trying to get attention of reporters, find them on Twitter and send them direct messages. I do it all the time, and on the whole, it's more effective than reaching out via email. So consider following, if you're trying to get a media splash, being active on Twitter. There's no limit to how much you can tweet as much as you want. It's a very interactive platform. Instagram, of course, it's all about images. The audience, talking about audiences we mentioned earlier, definitely skews younger. You can't link to anything in Instagram. So it's really a way to get folks interested to learn more, but it's a great platform to do that. And LinkedIn, certainly it's more formal. You probably wouldn't want to have a ton of emojis on a LinkedIn post, but it's best for specific types of contents, job postings, of course. This is on the right there is a job post. We had our Choose Clean Water conference back when we were planning to have it in May. Unfortunately, we weren't able to, but that's a good example of the type of content to put on LinkedIn. Event marketing, I know that's something that a lot of folks are, can struggle with it at times. First thing I want to mention, if you remember, one thing about event marketing is to have a registration page in advance if possible. Even if it's a free event, it's proven that your conversion rate, the amount of people that are actually going to come who say they are, it's much higher if you actually just have them go through the process of registering. It's also really effective for building your email lists, for your planning. If it's an event where you're having food, it's really nice to know how much food you need. So having a registration page, always recommended. Put the details for the event front and center and in multiple places. Think about, again, use empathy. Think about when someone shares an event with you, you're trying to learn the fast and dirty really quickly, right? Where is it? When is it? Can I make it, right? So have that information readily available and don't bury it. And again, going back to diversifying your mediums, share it in multiple places. Just like Jean mentioned with that example of the newsletter, some people will want the newsletter, some people will want Facebook, some people want the blog. The answer is all of the above, because everything I just mentioned, maybe not everything, but oftentimes everything is free. It's just a matter of making the extra effort to get it in front of as many eyes as possible. The website, of course, and again, it goes back to what works for your audience. I'm going to wrap up. Just similar to Jean, wanted to mention some resources. Every image I've used in this presentation has been from the Chesapeake Bay Program's Flickr account. It's an amazing resource. All you have to do is credit them. And they have thousands of beautiful images throughout the Bay watershed. So I highly recommend it. Bitly is a way to shorten your links. I use a direct example. The CBP's Flickr account was extremely long, the link, so I made it short. One of my pet peeves, Jean doesn't like when people say purchase instead of buy. One of my pet peeves is when people are marketing an event, for example, and it's, it's church.org/ and then the URL is, super duper long. I can't stand that, because who's going to take the time to write that down on their phone? It's a pain. Bitly is a free resource, 100% free. You can create your own custom links. It's going to say bit.ly, and then you can create you can customize the back end. And it's also really beneficial because you can see how many people use that link. So if you have a flyer, you can have the Bitly link, and you can see how many people actually used it to see what's most effective. Canva was already mentioned. And lastly, use me as your resource. Literally part of my job is helping our coalition members with their communications efforts. So please utilize that. It's part of the reason I'm here. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. There's my email address, and I'm happy to work with you in any capacity. So with that, thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Drew, for offering all those great resources and the inside story about how to use them in the most effective way. United Methodist Church, there she is, and she is a green team leader there, and United Methodist woman, and been doing a lot of great events in spite of the challenges of COVID. And so I invite her to share her story about how they organized a virtual film discussion. So take it away, Judy, and you can put it on the next slide.
Okay, everybody, I'm just going to tell you about our the Story of Plastic film project. And I am just, as Kolya said, I am just a congregation person, and I don't have great communication skills. And as you can see from my gray hair or my white hair, I certainly don't have a lot of social media know-how. But that's part of the reason why you need a team for whatever it is that you're going to do. Our green team at Chevy Chase has just been in existence for about a year and a half, maybe a year and a quarter. And in June, I found out from another Methodist person, UMW, about the project that they had done at their church, drawing in, that was in Howard County,
Oh,
showing, yes?
was that Emmanuel United Methodist?
Right, and this is Sherry Koob, was one of the helpers, but Liz Fainer is the one who helped me so much at Emmanuel. But she had pulled in other people. She had other partners, and I really was working pretty much on my own. So I would recommend that you get several partners. We did have co-sponsors. And I reached out to as many people as I could to try to get the word out, to spread the word, because we wanted as many people as possible to see the film and then to tune in to the panel discussion. So there were two parts to it. And the film, it's really a wonderful program because the film is free to anybody who registers. They do ask you, and this is storyofplastic.org. They do ask you how many people you think you need places for, and we had no idea, but we said 250. That was very ambitious, but actually it turned out that we had 247 people register to see the film. Now that doesn't mean that there were 247 who did it, nor that there were 247 that tuned in to the panel discussion. And you do have to commit to having a follow-up. If they let you show the film for free, you have to commit to having a follow-up discussion. And here you can see some of the people who, both on our panel, and I guess these are all our panelists. Yes, right. So that was part of it also, to reach out to find the panelists who would be willing to participate. And I was just amazed and so gratified that every single person we asked, and that included a Maryland State representative as well, a delegate, and then the Montgomery County Department of Environment and the district, the DC environmental director, as well as Sierra Club and the Rock Creek Conservancy. Those are our panelists there, and our pastor is in the middle there, Kirkland Reynolds.
Yeah. Well, I commend you, Judy, for on a couple of accounts. One, the outreach effort that you conducted to all those different congregations is really phenomenal. And then on top of that, you promoted the virtual discussion group. And how many attended the discussion group?
There were about 70 that came, that tuned into the discussion group. And, you know, the reason why we had so many was because of all of those 5 churches that that agreed to co-sponsor. So, and that was one of our objectives from the beginning. We wanted to work together with churches in the neighborhood. And so I did have some contacts, but also we had a Jewish congregation, we had a Catholic congregation, a Presbyterian congregation, an Episcopal congregation, 2 Methodist congregations. Yeah. So that was why, and you know, everybody just told their friends and their relatives. And even if you weren't in the area, my roommate from college was up in Massachusetts, but she was able to see the film and it made a big impression on everybody. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I recommend it to anybody. You can do this too.
Great. Thank you so much, Judy. That's an inspiration. And it's a wonderful example of one activity that all our congregations can do during this challenging time of COVID. So thank you, Judy. I really appreciate your contribution. Our next congregation green team leader is Roseanne Skirbel, and she is from Kehila Kadasha. And I welcome you, Roseanne. Roseanne has extensive experience also in journalism, and she worked for the Voice of America for many years as a journalist. So take it away, Roseanne.
So before I start, I just wanted to, since I've been a journalist for over 30 years, I wanted to make a few comments from the other side of the street. In other words, from the journalist. Can I do that?
Well, if you can keep it brief, we're already
very
over
brief, very brief.
We're
I
already
believe
over
in the
time.
4 C's. We also have something called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You should always have a lead sentence, a headline. Images are really important. Audio and video, we like that a lot. Also establish a relationship with the person, know who you're going to, not only what your audience is, but who you're trying to pitch it to, because it may be the wrong person, or it may be the right person, and always tell a story. And if it's a faith community, absolutely use your faith. All right, Kahila Halasha, that's just my response to that.
Thank you.
So basically, Kahila Halasha is it's a synagogue without a building on purpose. We want no building. So we are a very environmentally friendly congregation, and the environment is core to our values. And we decided a couple of years ago to become a green sanctuary with Green Faith, an organization located in New Jersey that certifies communities of faith. But we were one that didn't have a building, and they didn't want us to join initially. But we decided that we asked them if we could rewrite the rules for congregations of faith without buildings. Could we go through the process? So they said, well, okay. And so we did. And what you're looking at here, the first thing that we did beside writing a mission statement and forming a green team, which is still intact. There's about eight members on the green team, and the congregation only has 100 families. So as you can see, it's very important to who we are and what we do. And by the way, we lobby, we have a lecture series, we present seminars, etc. But for this particular slide, what it looks at, we wanted to know who we were, where were our congregants. We wanted to communicate with our congregants. And so we went through something called SurveyMonkey, which is another tool you might use that you might look into. And so we did a survey that would take our members about 20 minutes, and about 85% of them did it. So we were able to see what we needed to do, what we didn't need to do, and where we could go, because what we wanted to do was filter through all parts of our community, our services, education, energy, and communications with one another. We wanted to go into everything, okay, of our community. You want to go to the next slide? Or
Yeah, great.
okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And the next thing that we did is, so this is one of the tools that we developed, and I'd be glad to share it with anybody that would like it. This says Green Faith Pledges, that because we did it for Green Faith, but it was really for our congregation, and it's for our congregation and we can't do an energy audit on the building, but we can do an energy audit on our own homes. So we were looking at our energy use, water use, waste, toxins, and these are commitment pledges that you made. It says, please choose 12 action steps from the following list. Choose out of our 12 steps over the 2 years. So it's not like a heavy load, but we ask that 6 of them be big impact. And there are small steps and big steps. You know, I'll turn off all my lights, all the electronics, and I'll switch out the lights. That's easy. But buying, all future appliances I'll buy will be Energy Star. I mean, that's a bigger lift, All right, you want to go to the next one?
Yep. Great.
Okay, and also this is just a sample of what our Green News, we communicate in a newsletter that's online, and what we're trying to tell them are ways in which they can be active, engaged. We want all of them to switch out they want to switch off from Pepco, and a lot of our members already have. Actually, we've established, we've worked with the Montgomery County Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, MCFAX, of which I sit on their board. And we actually put together an energy guide that if you'd like a copy of that, just let me know through Interfaith Partners, and I can get that guide to you. We have it in English and Spanish. So that's the way we communicate with one another. Did I give you anything else? Or is that it?
Yeah, one more slide. Yep.
Okay, and so this is interesting because we were looking for a new rabbi for our synagogue 2 years ago, and so we did a survey of all of our community, and our green team did pretty well, you know. So they were pretty satisfied. I think the very dissatisfied person was saying that we talk too much, which I think is a good thing. So you know, my thing as a journalist and trying to pitch stories, if I'm going that way, is to tell them I've told them, and then to tell them again, so that I don't get off their radar. So I think that's 5 minutes.
That's great. Thank you so much for zooming through your slides, Roseanne, and offering a plethora of examples of how you can communicate within your congregation to mobilize people. So now, and apologies for going overtime here, but we have some time for just addressing some of the questions in the chat, and or you can unmute yourself if you have something you want to address to any of the presenters.
This was just absolutely excellent, but it was very fast and very, very full of information. And I wish you could, like, for people like me who are Luggites, and particularly Drew was like, so, I mean, all of you were so fabulous. If you could email the slides, I mean.
Well, we send the recording out to all of you a week after every webinar. We record every webinar and we send the recording out a week after it. So you will.
What about the slides?
So Barbara, I can go ahead and send you the slides as well.
Yeah, sure.
The slides will be in the recording, but I know it's usually helpful to have them separately as a PDF. So I'll go ahead and send them to you.
You all very modern people who can do all this. It's also said that when you actually have a hard copy and you actually can underline things, that's also a way of keeping them in your both your mind here and your real understanding deeper. But thank you so much.
Wow.
It's been really fascinating.
Great. Thank you, Barbara.
And thank you, Anna.
Any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so Kolia, I can't look at the chat.
Oh, okay. Now I pulled mine up. It says we have very inspiring, excellent presentation. Let me see if we've got any questions. Thanks for all the helpful information.
These are the kinds of hard-hitting questions we like.
Hey, listen, you all can make this a road show. This is just fabulous.
That's great. Fawn said she didn't know that eyes were such a powerful draw for people to see images of the eyes. Let's see here. Yeah, and then
also how to get the film. How did you get the film?
Yeah, so Judy, yeah, how did you get
plastic?
the film?
Yeah,
The plastic film,
Yes.
you just go to storyofplastic.com. And it will show up, it'll say something about that it's free for a community showing, a community screening, and then you have to fill out a form.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get back to you. And then, they recommend that you go through Eventbrite, which is step by step. They take you through that step by step as well.
Yeah.
That's great. I can actually do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I learned. I had to learn.
Well, I want to affirm that this has been a great example of Liz Feiner at Emmanuel United Methodist, who's a green team leader there, assisted Judy to get this going, and now the same ripple effect is happening here with between Judy and Barbara. So this is the kind of network that we're excited about developing as each one reach one. Any other?
I like that.
I'd also like to say that the Montgomery County Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, it's a once a month meeting, and I find it very useful for networking, which is how I found you, or you found me, that we were on the same Zoom call. And I think that is a really, really useful group. It's an alliance of faith communities in Montgomery County, focused, if you are in Montgomery County, focused it completely on local issues. So if any of you are from Montgomery County, you can email to me, or and we can get you, I can get you, you're welcome to come to the next meeting. It's usually the first Tuesday of every month, or the second Tuesday of every month. So
Great.
if you're interested, you're welcome. It's really very, very interesting.
Yeah. So Kolia, I guess
Yes.
we're right a little after 8.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of burning questions, but maybe it's because we just flooded everyone with so much good information to absorb at this point. And again, you all will receive a recording, as we always do, and we also post it on our website. So thank you again to all our presenters, and
Thank you. This is one of the highlights of my day.
really appreciate all your participation.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Stay safe, stay well.
God bless you, everyone. Be healthy
Yeah.
and safe.
Come June, we'll all be planting.
Right. And happy holidays. We won't see you all until January.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Almost a year into this. Thank you, Anna.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Everybody.
All right. Bye.
Roseanne, your note wall